Hello, my friend, and welcome back to Learn English Unleashed. I'm John. Something much bigger, something that makes people understand English, but stay quiet. Something that makes people know the answer, but never say it. Something that makes people practice for years, yet still feel nervous when it's time to speak. And that thing is fear. Fear of making mistakes. But what if I told you something surprising? What if mistakes are actually helping you learn faster? Stay with me, because today we're going to uncover a secret that many successful English speakers discovered long ago. And once you understand it, you may never look at mistakes the same way again. Now maybe you're thinking, John, speaking English is easy for some people. Maybe they are naturally talented. Maybe they have better memory. Maybe they live in America. Maybe they went to expensive schools. But what if none of those things are the real reason? What if the difference between confident speakers and nervous speakers is much smaller than you think? We're going to find out. And don't worry, even if you feel shy, even if you forget words, even if you freeze during conversations, even if you've been learning English for years, this episode is for you. And I want to make you a simple promise. No complicated theories. No confusing grammar lessons. Just simple ideas, simple examples, and simple actions you can start using today. So take a deep breath, relax, and let's begin. A few years ago, I met an English learner named Daniel. Daniel understood almost everything. He watched videos. He listened to podcasts. He read articles. He learned new words every day. On paper, he looked like a successful learner. But whenever somebody asked him a simple question in English, everything changed. His heart started beating faster. His mind became busy. And suddenly, the words disappeared. Have you ever experienced that? You know the answer. You know the words. But the moment you need to speak, your brain feels empty. If that sounds familiar, you're not alone. In fact, this happens to learners all around the world. And here's something interesting. Most people think they have a vocabulary problem. But many times, they actually have a fear problem. Think about that. Because it's a very important idea. The words may already be inside your mind. But fear creates noise. And that noise makes it harder to find those words. It's like trying to hear a friend talking while 100 people are shouting around you. The voice is there, but the noise gets in the way. Now here's a question for you. Why are we so afraid of mistakes? Why do mistakes feel so uncomfortable? Why do we remember one small mistake for days? We're going to answer that, but not yet. Because first, I want you to notice something. Think about a child learning to walk. Do they walk perfectly on the first day? Of course not. They fall. Again and again. Sometimes they fall 10 times. Sometimes 20 times. Yet nobody says, maybe walking isn't for you. Nobody says, you made too many mistakes. Nobody says, you should quit. Instead, everybody smiles. Everybody encourages them. Everybody expects mistakes. And eventually, the child learns to walk. Now ask yourself something. Why do we accept mistakes when learning to walk? But fear mistakes when learning English? Interesting question, right? Keep that question in your mind, because the answer might change the way you learn forever. Now let's talk about a common myth. Many learners secretly believe this. When my English becomes good enough, then I'll start speaking. It sounds logical, it sounds safe. But there's a problem. That day never arrives. Because you cannot wait for confidence to appear before you open your mouth. Because confidence is a result, not a requirement. You don't speak because you are confident. You become confident because you spoke. That's a huge difference. Imagine someone learning to swim. They stand beside the pool, day after day, week after week, month after month. They watch videos about swimming, read books about swimming, study swimming techniques, but never enter the water. Would they become a swimmer? Probably not, because some lessons can only be learned while doing, and speaking English works the same way. Now here's something that surprised Daniel. One day, he joined a small online conversation group. He was nervous, very nervous. Before speaking, he kept thinking, what if I make a mistake? What if I forget a word? What if people laugh? What if my pronunciation sounds strange? Maybe you've had similar thoughts. Most learners have. Anyway, Daniel finally spoke. And guess what happened? He made mistakes. Several mistakes. Not one. Not two. Several. And something unexpected happened. Nobody laughed. Nobody became angry. Nobody stopped the conversation. In fact, most people didn't even care. They were busy thinking about their own speaking. That moment changed everything. Because Daniel realized something powerful. The scary picture inside his mind was much bigger than reality. Maybe that's true for you too. Sometimes we imagine disasters that never happen. Sometimes we create problems before problems even exist. And that fear keeps us trapped. Now let me ask you a quick question. Have you ever avoided speaking English because you were afraid of making a mistake? If the answer is yes, you're completely normal. But here's the real danger. Making mistakes is not the biggest problem. Avoiding practice is. Think carefully about that. A mistake lasts a few seconds, but avoiding practice can slow progress for months. That's why today's lesson is so important. Because we're not just talking about English. We're talking about freedom. The freedom to express your ideas. The freedom to join conversations. The freedom to speak without constantly judging yourself. And that freedom starts with a simple shift in thinking. But before I reveal that shift, I want to share a strange fact. Have you noticed that people often remember embarrassing moments from years ago? Maybe you accidentally said something wrong. Maybe you mispronounced a word. Maybe you felt awkward during a conversation. And somehow, your brain keeps replaying it. Why? Because the brain is designed to protect you. It wants to prevent future embarrassment. The problem is that your brain sometimes becomes too protective. It starts treating tiny mistakes like giant dangers. But in reality, most mistakes are small, very small, much smaller than they feel. And here's the exciting part. The learners who improve fastest are not the learners who avoid mistakes. They are the learners who learn from mistakes. That's a completely different mindset. Instead of saying, I made a mistake, that's bad. They say, I made a mistake, that's useful. Can you feel the difference? One mindset creates fear. The other creates growth. One mindset creates silence. The other creates progress. And in the next part of this episode, I'm going to show you why mistakes are actually powerful learning tools, not obstacles, not proof that you're failing, not signs that you're bad at English, but clues, useful clues. Clues that tell you exactly what to improve next. And once you understand that idea, your relationship with mistakes may change forever. But before we continue, I want you to try something, a tiny challenge. Right now, think about one English mistake you made recently. Just one. Take a second and actually bring it to your mind. Now ask yourself, what did that mistake teach me? Maybe it taught you a new word. Maybe it taught you a grammar pattern. Maybe it showed you something you need to practice. Whatever the answer is, notice something important. The mistake gave you information, and information helps you improve. Interesting, isn't it? Maybe mistakes are not the enemy after all. Maybe they're teachers wearing a different disguise. And in the next section, we're going to explore exactly how that works. Because the biggest breakthrough in your English journey might come from the thing you've been trying to avoid all along: your mistakes. So stay with me, because we're just getting started. Welcome back, my friend. Before the break, I asked you to think about one mistake you made in English. Maybe it was a grammar mistake. Maybe it was a pronunciation mistake. Maybe you forgot a word during a conversation. Maybe you suddenly became nervous and your mind went blank. And I also asked you a question. What did that mistake teach you? Because today we're going deeper into something that most learners never understand. And once you understand it, your entire relationship with English may begin to change. Now here's something strange. Imagine two learners. The first learner studies every day, reads grammar books, memorizes vocabulary, watches videos, but avoids speaking because they don't want to make mistakes. The second learner studies too, but they also speak. They make mistakes. They sound imperfect. Sometimes they struggle. Sometimes they pause. Sometimes they say the wrong thing. 6 months later, which learner becomes a better speaker? Most people already know the answer. The second learner. And yet, most people still behave like the first learner. Interesting, right? We know mistakes help learning, but emotionally, we still fear them. Why? Because nobody likes looking imperfect. Nobody enjoys feeling uncomfortable. Nobody enjoys sounding less intelligent than they really are. But here's the secret. English is not a performance, it's a skill. Skills grow through imperfect practice, not perfect preparation. Think about it this way. You cannot think your way into fluency. You have to speak your way there. And that means accepting the rough, messy drafts that come out of your mouth first. And the next story proves something most learners never realize. Sometimes your biggest mistake becomes your biggest lesson. A learner named Sophia wanted to improve her speaking. Every morning she listened to English. Every evening she studied vocabulary. But she rarely spoke. Whenever she had a chance to speak, fear appeared. One day, she had to introduce her new project ideas in a small online group. She wanted to explain that her team needed more time to analyze the feedback, but she forgot the exact business terms. Her mind froze. Panic appeared, and then she became silent. After the conversation, she felt disappointed. She thought, I'm terrible at speaking. But was that true? Not really, because she discovered a clear gap. She discovered something she didn't know, and that discovery became valuable. The next day, instead of crying, she opened her notebook and learned phrases for professional workspace delays. We need to extend the deadline. Let's gather more data. We are currently reviewing the feedback. We need to reschedule the launch. Within a few days, she remembered all of them. And why? Because the mistake created a real-life need. And the brain loves learning things that feel useful. That's a huge lesson. Many learners try to learn thousands of words randomly. But the words you need most often come from your mistakes. Your mistakes reveal your next lesson. Your mistakes show you where to focus. Your mistakes give you direction. That's why today I want you to stop treating mistakes like enemies. Instead, treat them like clues. Think of yourself as a detective. Every mistake leaves evidence. Every mistake tells a story. Every mistake points toward improvement. Now here's a quick challenge. Repeat after me. Mistakes are clues. Again. Mistakes are clues. One more time. Mistakes are clues. Good. Keep that sentence in your mind, because we're going to use it throughout this episode. Now let me ask you something. Have you ever used a GPS map while driving? When you make a wrong turn, does the GPS shout at you? Does it say, "You are terrible at driving, you should quit"? Of course not. The GPS simply says, rerouting. It instantly uses your mistake to show you the next correct path. That is exactly how a successful learner uses their brain. A mistake is not a stop sign. It's just your internal GPS rerouting you to the correct phrase. Because communication matters more than perfection. That's another important idea. Communication matters more than perfection. Imagine you're in a coffee shop. You want to order something. You accidentally say, "Can I get one large coffee and two sandwich?" Maybe the grammar isn't perfect. But can the person understand you? Probably yes. Communication happened. The message arrived. The goal was achieved. Perfection was not required. Now don't misunderstand me. Improving grammar is valuable. Improving pronunciation is valuable. Improving vocabulary is valuable. But perfection should never become a requirement for speaking. Because if you wait for perfection, you may spend years waiting. Now here's another question. What if the fastest learners actually make more mistakes? At first that sounds strange, but think carefully. Someone who speaks often creates more opportunities to learn, more conversations, more feedback, more discoveries, more growth. Meanwhile, someone who stays silent creates fewer opportunities. Which learner improves faster? The answer becomes obvious. This leads us to the first major breakthrough. Collect your mistakes. Seriously. Start collecting them. Most learners collect vocabulary. Successful learners collect lessons. And many of those lessons come from mistakes. Here's a simple system. Whenever you notice a mistake, don't judge yourself. Don't criticize yourself. Don't replay the moment for hours. Instead, ask one question. What can this teach me? That's it. Simple, powerful, effective. For example, maybe you're talking about work. You suddenly realize you don't know how to explain a deadline. Great. That's a clue. Learn 3 useful expressions. Use them tomorrow. Maybe you're sharing an opinion and you can't find the right words. Excellent. Another clue. Learn the words. Practice them. Maybe you're explaining a movie. You keep repeating the same simple vocabulary. Interesting. Another clue. Expand your vocabulary in that area. Again, the mistake becomes useful. Can you see what's happening? We're changing the meaning of mistakes. Instead of proof of failure, they become directions for growth. And that shift changes everything. Now let's move to another powerful idea. Most learners believe confidence creates action. But in reality, action creates confidence. Think of a video game. You don't feel confident about defeating the boss level before playing. You fail, you lose your energy bar, you learn the enemy's moves, and after that action, the confidence appears. Readiness comes after the battle, not before. Speaking English works exactly the same way. Many learners are waiting to feel ready. But readiness often comes from action. Not before action. After action. That's why I want to give you a tiny speaking challenge. A very small one. So small that almost anyone can do it. For the next 2 minutes after this episode, speak English to yourself. Just 2 minutes. That's all. Not 20. Not 30. 2. Pretend you're ordering food online. Explain what you want and why. Maybe you're choosing between 2 meals. Maybe you're comparing prices. Maybe you're deciding what to order for dinner. Or imagine your friend asks for a movie recommendation. Explain your choice in English. Tell them what the movie is about. Tell them why you enjoyed it. Tell them who should watch it. Anything. Just keep talking. Don't stop for mistakes. Don't correct every sentence. Just communicate. Because something surprising happens when you do this regularly. Your brain starts becoming comfortable. And comfort reduces fear. Remember that. Comfort reduces fear. The more familiar speaking becomes, the less scary it feels. And the less scary it feels, the more often you'll do it. Now, before we continue, I want to share something that many learners never hear. The goal is not to eliminate mistakes. The goal is to recover from mistakes. That's what real communication looks like. Even advanced speakers make mistakes. Even fluent speakers make mistakes. Even native speakers make mistakes. The difference is simple. They keep going. They don't stop the conversation. They don't panic. They continue communicating. And that's a skill you can develop too. In the next section, we're going to uncover something even more powerful. We're going to talk about a habit that quietly destroys speaking confidence. A habit that millions of learners repeat every single day without realizing it. And once you notice it, you may never learn English the same way again. Because the problem isn't always the mistake itself. Sometimes it's what you do immediately after the mistake. And that's where the real breakthrough begins. So stay with me, because we're about to uncover one of the biggest hidden reasons learners stay stuck for years. And the surprising part, most learners repeat this habit every single day without even noticing it. Welcome back, my friend. We're getting closer to one of the biggest breakthroughs in your English journey. In the last section, we discovered something important. Mistakes are not proof that you're failing. Mistakes are clues, useful clues. And we also talked about something many learners forget. The goal is not to eliminate mistakes. The goal is to keep communicating even when mistakes happen. Now let me ask you a question. Have you ever finished an English lesson feeling motivated, but the next day you couldn't remember much? Maybe you learned 10 new words. Maybe you understood everything. Maybe you even felt confident. But 2 days later, most of it disappeared. Why does that happen? We're about to uncover the answer, and the answer is probably not what you think. Most learners believe learning happens when information enters the brain. But that's only half the story. The real magic happens when information comes back out. Think about that. Many people spend all day putting English into their minds. Videos, podcasts, movies, articles, lessons, vocabulary lists, more videos, more lessons, more information, but very little output, very little speaking, very little retrieval. And that's where progress slows down. Imagine filling a water bottle every day, but never opening the cap. Eventually the bottle becomes full, but nothing moves, nothing flows. Many learners accidentally do the same thing. They keep collecting English, but they rarely use it. Today we're going to change that. Because I want to show you 2 habits that can completely transform your speaking confidence. Not expensive habits. Not difficult habits. Simple habits. Practical habits. Habits that fit into real life. And here's the exciting part. You can start both of them today. Let's begin with the first one. I call it, narrate your day. Now don't worry, this sounds bigger than it actually is. It's extremely simple. Most people walk through their day silently. They make decisions, solve problems, complete tasks, react to situations, but everything happens inside their native language. What if you started moving some of those moments into English? Not all day, just a few minutes. Let me show you. Imagine you are at your desk right now. Instead of staying silent, start narrating your small actions. I'm wiping the desk. My laptop screen is dusty. I need to find my notebook. The fan is too loud. Simple, very simple. But something powerful is happening. You're training your brain to create English directly, without waiting for a textbook, without waiting for a teacher, without waiting for a perfect situation. Now here's something important. Do not worry about perfect grammar. That's not today's goal. Today's goal is movement, forward movement. Let's try another example. Imagine you look out the window. Try saying, "The weather is changing today. The market looks busy. I need to pick up some groceries later. The sun is really bright right now. Notice something. These are real thoughts, real situations, real English, not random vocabulary from a list. This is practical language, language connected to life, and that's exactly why it works. Now here's a quick challenge. For the next 30 seconds, think about something you did this morning. Can you describe it in English? Not perfectly, just simply. Maybe. I missed my first alarm. I rushed to get ready. I couldn't find my keys. I almost forgot my wallet. That's enough. Remember, simple English spoken consistently beats perfect English spoken rarely. That's worth repeating. Simple English spoken consistently beats perfect English spoken rarely. Now let's move to something even more powerful. A micro-routine. A tiny daily routine. Only 2 minutes. Yes, 2 minutes. Because many learners say, I don't have enough time. Maybe you've said that too. But almost everybody can find 2 minutes. Here's the routine. Minute 1. Describe your current situation. Where are you? What can you see? What are you doing? What are you planning next? Minute 2. Talk about your next task. Maybe you're going shopping. Maybe you're attending a meeting. Maybe you're preparing dinner. Maybe you're visiting a friend. Speak about it in English. That's it. Just 2 minutes. Simple, manageable, powerful. And here's what happens. The brain begins building speaking pathways. Little by little, day by day, week by week. Now let me ask you another question. What usually happens after you make a mistake? Be honest. Do you keep speaking? Or do you immediately start criticizing yourself? Many learners become their own worst critics. One small mistake appears. And suddenly a voice inside says, that was terrible. Your English isn't good. You sound silly. You should stop talking. Sound familiar? Here's the problem. That voice is not helping. That voice is interrupting practice. Imagine trying to learn basketball. You take one shot. You miss. Then somebody grabs the ball and ends the game. Would you improve? Of course not. You need repetitions. Speaking works the same way. That's why your next habit is called build tiny speaking sprints. A speaking sprint is a short period where you focus on communication only. No stopping, no judging, no editing every sentence, just speaking. Let me show you. Imagine you're waiting for food at a restaurant. Instead of checking your phone immediately, start a 3-minute speaking sprint. Talk about your day. Talk about your plans. Talk about a movie you watched. Talk about a problem you solved. Anything. The topic doesn't matter. The speaking matters. And here's the rule. Keep going. Even if mistakes appear. Actually, especially if mistakes appear. Because this is where growth happens. Now let's build a 5-minute version. I call this the daily speaking sprint. Minute 1. Describe your surroundings. Minute 2. Describe something that happened today. Minute 3. Describe something that annoyed you. Minute 4. Describe something you're looking forward to. Minute 5. Describe one thing you learned recently. 5 minutes, that's all. No expensive course, No complicated app. No perfect grammar required. Just practice. Consistent practice. Now here's a curiosity question. Why do some learners suddenly become more fluent after a few months? Did they suddenly become smarter? Usually not. Did they suddenly memorize a dictionary? No. Most of the time they simply increased output. They started speaking more. They started retrieving more. They started using English instead of only consuming English. That's the difference. Input is important, but output creates strength. Think about it. Input gives you the raw ingredients, but output? Output teaches you how to actually cook the meal. And you cannot satisfy your hunger by just looking at ingredients, and both are necessary. Now, I want you to anchor this golden rule into your mind right now. Don't just hear it. Feel it. You don't learn a language to speak it. You speak a language to learn it. Every conversation teaches something. Every attempt teaches something. Every mistake teaches something. Now here's a small story. A learner named Marcus used a strange but brilliant digital trick. He created a private WhatsApp group where he was the only member. He named the group My English Gym. Every single night before going to sleep, he would send a 2-minute voice note to that empty group, not for social media, not for anyone else, just for himself. Some days he talked about a difficult task he solved at work or a funny video he watched. Some days he talked about traffic, a difficult customer, or his future goals. At first, his voice notes had long pauses. He sounded nervous, he repeated words, and he struggled to find the right vocabulary. But he didn't stop. He kept sending notes to himself every single night, and after 3 months, something shifted. Speaking started feeling normal. Not perfect. Normal. And that's important. Because fluency often begins when speaking feels normal instead of scary. Think about that. Most learners are chasing perfection. But what they really need first is comfort. Comfort creates consistency. Consistency creates improvement. Improvement creates confidence. And confidence creates even more speaking. It's a positive cycle. A powerful cycle. And in our final section, we're going to talk about the habit that separates learners who stay stuck from learners who finally become confident speakers. Because sooner or later, every learner reaches a moment where they must make a choice. Wait until they feel ready. Or speak before they feel ready. And that choice changes everything. So stay with me, because the most powerful lesson of today's episode is still ahead. Welcome back, my friend. We've come a long way together. At the beginning of this episode, we talked about fear. Not grammar, not vocabulary, not pronunciation. Fear. The fear of making mistakes. The fear of sounding wrong. The fear of being judged. The fear of feeling embarrassed. And now you've discovered something powerful. Mistakes are clues. Communication matters more than perfection. Speaking creates confidence. And small daily actions create big results. But now we're about to discuss the most important lesson of all. Because there is one habit that separates learners who stay stuck for years from learners who finally become confident speakers. And that habit is surprisingly simple. They speak before they feel ready. Think about that for a moment. Most learners are waiting for a future version of themselves, a version that knows more vocabulary, a version with better grammar, a version with perfect pronunciation, a version with zero mistakes. And they tell themselves, when I reach that level, then I'll start speaking. But here's the problem. That moment rarely arrives. Because speaking confidence is not a destination, it's a result. Confidence grows after action, not before action. Imagine learning to ride a bicycle. At first you wobble, you lose balance. Sometimes you stop suddenly. But every ride teaches you something. Maybe you're not perfect. Maybe you're still learning. But each week you gain experience. Each week you become more comfortable. Eventually confidence appears. Not because you waited, because you acted. English works exactly the same way. Now let me tell you a story. A learner named Emma had been studying English for almost 5 years. 5 years. She understood podcasts. She understood movies. She understood articles. But she almost never spoke. Whenever an opportunity appeared, she found a reason to avoid it. Maybe next month. Maybe after more vocabulary. Maybe after another grammar course. Maybe after more practice. Maybe later. Always later. One day, something happened. Her company organized an international online meeting. Emma knew she might have to speak. Immediately, fear appeared. Her mind started creating problems. What if I make mistakes? What if I forget words? What if people think my English is bad? What if I sound nervous? Maybe you've had thoughts like that. Most learners have. But this time something was different. Emma remembered a simple idea. Speak before you feel ready. So she made a decision. Not a huge decision, not a dramatic decision, a small one. If she had a chance to speak, she would say at least one sentence. Just one. The meeting started, people talked, ideas were shared, and then an opportunity appeared. Emma felt nervous. Very nervous. Her heart started beating faster. Her hands felt tense. The familiar fear returned. But she spoke anyway. One sentence, then another, then another. Were there mistakes? Yes. Several. Did the meeting collapse? No. Did people laugh? No. Something much more interesting happened. The conversation continued. And when the meeting ended, Emma realized something. The fear before speaking had been much bigger than the reality of speaking. That realization changed everything. Because many fears become smaller once we face them. Now here's a question. How many opportunities have you avoided because you were waiting to feel ready? Think carefully. A conversation, a voice message, a speaking partner, an online community, a meeting, a phone call, maybe more than you realize. And that's okay, because today is not about regret. Today is about a new beginning. Now I'd like to introduce something I call the daily brave moment. This may become the most powerful habit in this entire episode. And it's very simple. Every day, choose one small moment that feels slightly uncomfortable, not terrifying, not overwhelming, just slightly uncomfortable. And use English. That's it. Maybe you leave a voice note in English. Maybe you ask a question in an online group. Maybe you introduce yourself to someone. Maybe you record a 1-minute speaking practice. Maybe you join a conversation. Maybe you share an opinion. The action doesn't need to be huge. The courage matters more than the size. Because courage grows through repetition. One brave moment today, another brave moment tomorrow, another brave moment next week. And suddenly, you're becoming someone who speaks, not someone who waits. Now let's build a practical routine, a 3-step confidence routine. Step 1. Notice the fear. Don't fight it. Don't panic. Simply notice it. Step 2. Speak anyway. Even one sentence counts. Step 3. Celebrate the action, not the perfection. Celebrate the fact that you spoke. This is important. Many learners only celebrate perfect results, but successful learners celebrate progress. Progress creates momentum. Momentum creates consistency. Consistency creates transformation. Now let me ask you something. What if your mistakes are actually evidence that you're growing? Think about learning to drive. Would mistakes happen? Of course. Think about learning a sport. Would mistakes happen? Absolutely. Think about learning a musical instrument. Would mistakes happen? Every day. So why should English be different? Growth and mistakes often travel together. The learners who understand this improve faster because they stop wasting energy fighting mistakes. Instead, they focus on learning from them. Now let's do one final repeat after me exercise. Ready? I don't need perfect English to communicate. Again. I don't need perfect English to communicate. One more time. I don't need perfect English to communicate. Excellent. Now another one. Mistakes help me improve. One more time. Very good. Keep those sentences. Because they can change the way you think, and the way you think changes the way you learn. Now, before we finish, let's quickly review everything we've discovered today. Today we discovered something powerful. Fear is normal. Mistakes are useful. Communication matters more than perfection. Speaking creates confidence. And one brave action every day can change everything. One small act of courage every day. Simple, practical, powerful. Now imagine something. Imagine yourself 6 months from today. Not 6 years, just 6 months. You continue using these habits. You stop treating mistakes like enemies. You speak more often. You judge yourself less. You practice consistently. You take one brave action every day. How different could your English become? Probably much more than you think. Because confidence doesn't arrive in one dramatic moment. It arrives quietly, one conversation at a time, one attempt at a time, one mistake at a time, one brave moment at a time. And one day, you suddenly notice something. You're speaking more naturally. You're thinking less about mistakes. You're worrying less. You're expressing ideas more easily. Not because you became perfect, because you became comfortable. And comfort is often the beginning of fluency. So here's my challenge for you. Today, not tomorrow, not next week, today, find one daily brave moment, just one. Speak English. Even if you're nervous, even if you're uncertain, even if mistakes happen, especially if mistakes happen, because every mistake is teaching you something. Every attempt is making you stronger, and every sentence you speak is moving you forward. If you remember only one thing from today's episode, remember this. Speak before you feel ready. Remember this. Your goal is not perfect English. Your goal is real communication. Your goal is progress. Your goal is confidence. Your goal is freedom. The freedom to express yourself. The freedom to share your ideas. The freedom to speak without constantly fearing mistakes. And that freedom begins with a single decision. Speak before you feel ready. Thank you for spending this time with me today. Keep practicing, keep learning, keep speaking, and most importantly, keep moving forward. Because your English journey is not defined by your mistakes. It's defined by what you do after them. I'll see you in the next episode of Learn English Unleashed. Take care, my friend. And remember, the next sentence you speak might be the one that changes everything.